No moral ambiguity, all the ingenuity. Thoroughly directed at war in your community. No matter what they do to me, it won't change the fact. Freedom's a human right, it's time to take me back. So how do we stop this obnoxious nonsense? A meeting, a forum, a concert, a conference. I understand the need to talk and process, but we need action, not just thoughts and concepts.
Somebody help me.
That's word.
This is not healthy.
Man.
I am not wealthy.
What I do, have the power to break the chains.
Hello everyone, I'm Ibrahim Mubarak, the host and executive director and founder of Right to Survive. And in our mission statement, Right to Survive is a grassroots organization that's made up of houseless people, formerly houseless people, their allies and their supporters, where we go into the houseless community to educate them on their human, constitutional, and civil rights and teach them their rights and promote them to speak up for themselves. We hear a lot about police accountability, the shootings, the badgering people, the harassing people. But we want to know who's holding the police accountable for the harassment and the civil injustice they're doing in the houseless community. So we asked our guest, JoAnn Hardesty, who is president of the NAACP and city council candidate, who more knowledge on police accountability than probably anybody I know except the police themselves.
No, I think I know more than they do. Thank you.
Well, good. They get mad when you know more than them.
They do.
Yeah.
It's a pleasure to join you, Ibrahim. Thank you.
Thank you for coming on our show in your busy schedule. And this is a very important time for you today.
Yes, it is.
We went out into the houseless community and asked the houseless people themselves on how the police and what they think if the police are being accountable for their actions. Right. And now we're going to go to the video. Bang.
Are you ever afraid of the police?
Always.
Tell me, hey, you gotta move from here, man.
They were stretching me over the counters.
Who know more about police accountability in the houseless community than the houseless people? Paul Bowling from San Francisco, he said once, what crime are we committing when we sleep? So have you ever been given a citation from a law enforcement officer for something like not looking both ways when you cross the street?
Oh,
Jaywalking ticket?
Yeah.
I got a ticket right here in Gresham for camping on the sidewalks. I was changing a flat tire.
Really?
Yeah, and I had to unload my bike to get to my pump and stuff because it was in the tool bag underneath my sleeping bag. I wasn't even camping in Gresham. I'd been at the girlfriend's house. I was going home.
In the morning, whenever we were woke up, asked to move, I just moved this over under a tree in the park, and I had two park rangers come up during the day and tell me that their disclosure was, now this might surprise you just because, it's not a tent or anything, but the amount of blankets you have on top of you constitutes camping.
Do you feel that the police profiling of people is a form of oppression?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, for sure. For sure. They're making the statistics a stereotype. We're human, and each one of us is different.
I think that because I dress up as a girl and all that, they think that they can harass me more. But if I'm dressing like a guy, they seem to slow down a little more, but they still know they harass me, They still come up to me and tell me, hey, you gotta move from here, man. You're gay, just add that quotation, you're gay, you gotta move from here,
We did a radio show once, the hardship of houseless women on the streets, and when this one lady said she got abused, taken advantage of, the police looked at her social status and said, you sure you wasn't trying to do it for money or something?
I had a similar experience to literally what you just said, where I had reported abuse, and the cops literally were like, oh, were you they asked some weird question, and I was like, are you asking if I'm prostituting? And they were like, yeah. And I was like, no, I was not. I was very offended. The police definitely target people who are houseless.
And it make you do it? Does it oppress you when they do that?
Yeah.
Did you do a written complaint? And if so, has it worked?
I didn't know you could make a written complaint, honestly. When I lived in Sandy out in the woods, if they came across a houseless person's camp, they would try to tell you that it was illegal, first of all, to camp out there, even though on their website it specifically says that it is legal to camp, so long as you take out what you take in,
Right.
and you don't disturb natural areas. So people would camp in areas that were already had paths. But when they came along, they would post on your camp and they would attach resources to Portland, Oregon, of all places. But no bus passes, no way to get there, nothing. They were just like, here's resources in another town, leave. And that right there told you that they were targeting houseless people. Like, why would you be attaching houseless resources to the notice that it's illegal for me to camp here when your website says it's legal and you're attaching resources for houseless people?
The incident was that they were booking me in and they were standing on my feet, and like the old-fashioned stretcher, they were stretching me over the counter. So I was standing on my feet, pulling me up. Absolutely awful. It was really brutal. And what I was told was that they're going to be putting a camera in the booking room in August.
I have a friend who's deaf. He's out here. He's houseless. And 2 days ago, the cops came in, and he was in his tent. He's doing whatever he does, singing and stuff. And they just started trashing his stuff, breaking it, throwing it in the back of the truck, slashing his tent up. And he's like, he's like, I cannot hear you, I'm deaf. And they're like, oh, that's likely story, And I'm like, wow. Are you kidding me?
Wow.
Yeah, who's gonna help him? Nobody's gonna help accountable for that kind of stuff. Who?
And that goes back to the topic. How can we hold them accountable? Who's holding them accountable?
It's the administration, the police chief.
I don't know who.
If the mayor knows them.
Judges can't even do it.
But they don't do it. We went and had them go to the independent police review, and then we saw the police chief then, Deanna, and she said, bring me video proof. We bought a video proof, and it took her 3 weeks to look at it when I saw it, so I haven't looked at it yet. What do you think we can do to hold the police accountable for their action against us? Because we're humans. We have a right to exist, right?
They're having the police plunge today. When they get out of the plunge, instead of going out and drying off, they ought to lay down on the concrete for a couple hours. That'll give them perspective. That's what they lack. They treat you as if you are less than human, like you say, and don't really, we don't have any rights. We don't have any, there for a long time until they lost a couple of lawsuits. They just come in, open your tent up and go through it. And they still do that.
You know what I'm getting from all of this?
What is it?
Is there's not going to be any accountability for anybody, the police, the homeless, anybody, unless there's a third-party observer.
Yeah.
And what we have to be pushing for, I believe, is body cameras on the police have to be on for every encounter.
Every time I get one step in the right direction, they're there to take away the building blocks that I used to get there. You know what I mean? Take away our showers, take away. So, spirit, your self-esteem, your self-respect.
Each time you're trying to improve yourself,
they take it away.
The police come, they take it away.
And they make it harder for you to get another step up.
All right, welcome back, and we hope that you enjoyed this short video with the houseless community, expressing their feelings on how they've been treated bad. I always say, if you're not doing anything to help humanity, you practice human malpractice because we all are human, and what gives us the right to say this person, this fellow human, don't deserve no rights. So here we back with JoAnn Hardesty, NAACP president and city council candidate, and inquiry.
If I may just say something about the video.
Yes.
Because I heard someone say they didn't know they could even file a complaint against police, which just breaks my heart, right? Because everybody has the right to file a complaint if they feel like they've been treated inappropriately. Now, you and I know that the system that we have in place is woefully inadequate to hold police accountable. The independent police review process isn't independent, doesn't really review the police, and for a long, long time, would just toss out complaints from houseless people because their theory was, well, we can't contact them because they don't have an address. So rather than even start an investigation, they would just toss them out. And so because of our work, they no longer just toss it out because somebody is houseless. So that's an improvement. But as you also know, it is almost impossible to find a police officer guilty of anything, especially when it relates to a community member who's been harmed by that police officer. I think everybody should know that they have the right to complain, but then the other issue is that I don't pretend that the system that we have works for anybody other than the police.
So for the love of me and my warped sense of thinking,
yes,
why would they call it independent police review if they don't review?
Well, I mean, because it's a way to pretend that you have oversight of a paramilitary organization who sells fear to the community. Right? I mean, the police whole job is to scare people into demanding more resources for them. I think the public allows the police to frame the public dialogue. The public allows the police to tell them where crime is happening, who the criminals are, and what resources they need to fight back. If you've called the police precinct recently, because this is what the police do during budget time, all their phones are on recorders. And their phones say, because of staffing shortages, no one's here to answer the phone, right? And then they give you this whole long list of, if you need X, call so-and-so. If you need X, call so-and-so, right? And but it's a theme. Right now, Portland police are conducting community trainings, right? Quote unquote, I call them trainings because they did it at East Precinct recently, 2 trainings. And it was supposed to actually help community members identify crime and criminal behavior. What it really is a ploy to get homeowners to go to City Hall and demand that the 92 cops that police asked for in the next budget, they get, right? Because if you scare people, they're going to go and demand that the police come and solve the problem. But the police are not the answer to mental health issues. The police are not the answer to alcohol and drug issues. The police are not the answer to rising rents where people can't afford first, last, and security deposit. A police response will never fix those issues. And so the fact that the police have done a very effective job of marketing their necessity to the public, which is why they are now in this marketing campaign to convince the public that they're desperately shorthand, right? But how often have you been at a protest and there have been more police than you thought we had in the Portland Police Bureau, right? And so clearly when we need police, we can find them, right? So where are they when they're not on the street? Well, they're sitting on their butt in these specialized units, right? Whether it's the Gang Enforcement Task Force, whether it's the Joint Terrorism Task Force, right? And they're behind closed doors doing stuff, right? They claim we need police officers on the street. Well, take them out of the schools and put them on the street. Take them out of the offices and put them on the street. Then come back and tell me you need more cops, right? Because they haven't sold me they need more cops. I think they got too many. That's the problem. We got too many, and we're not thinking. Policing is a partnership. The community agrees to be policed, right? The community agrees these are the problems that we want you to help solve, right? But we now have it backwards. We have the police telling us who's the criminals, where the crime is, and how much money they need to solve it, right? And we don't have the kind of leadership on city council to actually push back, right? Because the police are the only ones that got a 9% pay raise last year. We had a lot of city employees, and they didn't get a 9% pay raise.
And they not only that, but they get paid leave vacation when they do something wrong. Okay, I don't want to.
Right. Don't get me started there. We can spend the rest of our time talking about that.
You certainly can.
But again, it's because we, the public, have allowed them to actually own so many areas that aren't theirs. I don't want police coming out on mental health calls. I'd much rather have a firefighter coming out than a police officer,
Exactly.
right? Because they are trained to be compassionate and empathetic and actually look for how to help people. Police are trained to teach you to conform to whatever their will is. But if you are suffering a mental health crisis, if you are in a crisis state, you're not listening to anybody, much less a police officer, right? And so we, again, send the wrong people to answer community problems, right? So in my view, we have to get police doing just policing. They shouldn't be doing anything outside of policing. If it's not walking a beat, if it's not doing traffic patrol, they should not be doing it.
So again, I want to give kudos and honor to the late James Chassie, who he paid with his life to bring awareness of the mental illness that rise in the houseless community.
But
and
James Chassie, Keaton Otis, and Aaron Campbell were all killed that same year. They all had mental health issues that they were impacting, right? And nobody went to jail, and nobody lost their job. And we, the taxpayer, paid a small fortune to settle those cases. But again, ever since the Department of Justice has been here, every person killed by the police had a mental health issue. But the DOJ says they're making improvements. How?
Getting rid of the mental people on the streets. That's what they're doing.
I mean, I think it's insulting that we allow that to continue, and then when they tell us what a great job they're doing, most of the general public just says, well, the police have a hard job. It's a harder job to be a cab driver than it is to be a police officer.
You better believe it. Is it fair to say, after watching the video, that houseless people of color are targeted based on their social status and economic background?
Oh, I think anybody who is socially, economically impaired at the moment faces a greater scrutiny by the public and have a better opportunity to be impacted by law enforcement, right? And of course, since we know what the data shows, right, that people of color are always, as African Americans, 3 times more likely to be stopped, twice as likely to be searched, half as likely to have drugs, guns, and other paraphernalia. The same with Latinos. I mean, you know, it goes on and on and on. But if you add the component of being houseless and being on the street, then your threat of being targeted and moved is significantly increased, regardless of what color you are.
But when we ask the audience who's going to come up and ask questions later, and when we interviewed the people from Village of Hope, it was only really one person of color out there, and these was all white. So it doesn't matter the color of your skin, it's your social status that the police are telling the neighborhoods, the business people, that those are the bad guys because they sleeping on the street.
Since this housing crisis has just expanded beyond anybody's wildest dream, the reality is, I live in East Portland, and where I live, the people on the freeway overpass begging for money are all over 60 years old, and they are seniors on fixed incomes, right? You do the math, you know, your rent goes up 30, 40, 50%, and your Social Security doesn't, and your retirement doesn't. What gives? Food gives, medicine gives. That's the only wiggle room you have, right? And so, yes, people who, and I've had over 59 house parties so far as I'm running for city council, and every single household, every coffee I've had, housing is the #1 issue on people's mind. If they are a homeowner, they're fearful of actually being forced out of their home. If they are a renter, they're wondering if the next rent increase is going to be the one that puts them out, right? If they are a comfortable homeowner who aren't threatened by the socioeconomic conditions, at first they're very empathetic when they see people sleeping in their neighborhood, right? It starts with empathy. Oh my gosh, but for grace, that could be I, right? Then a couple more people come. Then there's a little trash, right? Then the next thing you know, then it starts becoming fear. Well, are they going to hurt me, or are my kids safe, right? And then so when the fear escalates, the more people show up, right? And then the more garbage shows up, right? A more humane approach would be to hire houseless people to actually clean up the garbage, to bring a mobile shower, bring mobile laundry facilities, bring mobile food. That would be a much more humane approach rather than what we do. And I tell homeowners this all the time. Here's what you do, right?
Exactly.
In 60 days, you're on the phone to the cops. Hey, we got to get these people out of here, right? If we get these people out of here, because, you know, all of a sudden it's dangerous, right? And so the reality is that we spend our resources very foolishly on policing rather than actually spending the resources on resolving the problem that people face.
So who are the police accountable to if not the public? And why are they oppressive when working in the houseless area?
Because again, we've allowed them to expand their service area. They only should be police officers. They have no business trying to address mental health issues, no business trying to address housing issues.
So who are they accountable to?
Well, supposedly to us. We pay their salary, right? We pay their salary. If the system that we have now doesn't work, which you and I both know, IPR doesn't work for anybody but the police,
Right.
it is our responsibility to change the oversight system. And that's what we have to do. We have to change it so that it really is independent, so that the community really gets to hold the police accountable. Because what we have now is a rubber stamp process. The police say nothing, we did nothing wrong. I was so pleased, however, Chief Outlaw, her very first action as chief was to side with a community member who the police officer lied to by telling them that they could not film them doing their job.
So we
Remember?
want to see what she say when a houseless person come to her and talk.
Well, I mean, she needs to be educated, just like
Yeah.
everyone else. She needs to know that houseless people have just as much right to walk on the street as anybody else. They have just as much right to be. And if you have nowhere to be, any place should be okay. Why are you pushing people from one place to another?
I think they have places to be. They don't want us to be there.
Well, actually, no. I think what the government's response is out of sight, out of mind, right? We open up enough shelters, right? But the shelters, we only want to open shelters that open at 7 p.m. and kick people out at 6 a.m., right? That's not permanent. That's not security. That's not helping people get a foot up.
You still wondering, how is our system set up to keep some officers harassing folks in a community over and over without consequence?
Well, you know, that's why you and I do know your rights trainings, right?
Exactly.
Because the more people cop watching the police, taking pictures, standing witness when somebody gets stopped, the safer everyone is. No one dies most of the time when the community stops and takes pictures of the cops when they're interacting with people, right? And for most of the time, both the cops and the community member are safer when the community bears witness. And so I think the more we get more community members, housed and unhoused, actually taking pictures of police officers, I mean, they try to intimidate you, they try to tell you you have to move along, and that's not true. That's illegal to say that, because it's not, the law says clearly that we have a right to film them. And so you just have to be strong enough to just say, nope, just watching, just not moving.
And you can still film it.
And you can still film them, absolutely.
Well, kiss my ankle. I didn't
Absolutely.
know. Yeah, that's it.
And you know, Oregon's legislature reaffirmed that 2 years ago.
Yeah.
And so it is the law. It has always been the law in Oregon. It always will be the law in Oregon.
Since I'm on camera.
Yeah.
Do you mind if I see some ID since you got me on camera and everything like that?
I really don't have to give ID out when because I can film in public all I want.
I know, that's what I'm saying, but since you got getting me on camera, can I ask you for ID since you're getting my ID?
I didn't even really get your ID, but I could, and I, you know. But
you have every right to. You have every right to.
Yeah, I would rather not give my ID out unless.
Are you hiding from something?
No.
You don't have any
No, I'm just exercising my right.
Yeah, I have that right to exercise, but I'm always curious on someone that wants to exercise it so much and give up such an argument on not giving up the ID that makes you wonder.
No, there's nothing to wonder about at all. It's just real familiar with what my rights are, and I can film and free speech.
A lot of people don't know their rights. That's good.
Yep, and I want my rights protected. That's why I'm out doing this stuff, is so that my rights and the Constitution and is really adhered to.
Now we're going to go to our audience so they can ask us questions, and then we're going to come back and continue this great conversation.
All right,
with
you know, the
JoAnn.
audience members are going to go around to the mic, and then they're going to go up and ask questions, I suspect.
Exactly.
Can a witness make a written complaint about occurrences where the police are not showing kindness and honoring the dignity of members of of our community, including homeless and other disenfranchised members of our community, what is the process and what follow-up should I expect?
And what's question 2?
Do you guys think it would help if law enforcement officers spent time camping with homeless people and experienced their world?
Yes.
Thank you.
I would love.
But Detroit person, thank you.
I would love to see that.
I would love to see that too, and I think there might be an opportunity with new leadership in the police bureau to really make that opportunity available. And maybe the Pitch a Tent event would be a great event to invite Chief Outlaw to come and actually spend some time in non-Chief Outlaw-like clothing, right? So that she can come and just kind of observe, because that's a really positive event. But to the first question, absolutely, witnesses can file complaints on behalf of a community member, and the complaint would be basically based on what they saw, right? And so it's like, I witnessed this, right? And I took pictures, or I didn't take pictures, but this is what I saw. This is the time and date it happened. This was the location it happened. And I think something needs to be done. So yes, you don't have to be the victim of it to file a complaint. You could also be a witness and file a complaint.
I was just thinking, because you just said right now, it is not against the law to film the police. And even if they say, move along, you can't do it. Well, in a recent situation with Village of Hope, there was someone back there who was trying to film what the police officers were doing when they started scattering everybody off of that land. And the footage is not great because the police officer said, move along, and was very intimidating as far as how they were positioned to this person. So in a situation like that, would this gentleman still have been able to film what was happening, or was it because they were sweeping people off that area that they had to go anyway?
So I will say that police can always justify their behavior and their actions after the fact. What I would say is that it's always legal to film the police, but I also remind you that they have life and death decision-making opportunities, right? And so I think the priority is to keep yourself safe. And if the officer is getting aggressive, then I would totally back off, but I would try to find out what their name is and then file a complaint after. Can't file a complaint if you're dead, because the police story will be radically different than what really happened.
And they get paid leave off of you also. Okay, we got another question.
As a houseless individual or just a person walking down the street, what is my rights when approached by an officer? Do I have to stay? Do I have to allow a search? What are my rights?
Your rights, when you're stopped by a police officer, you have no obligation to talk to that police officer at all. My first question is always, am I under arrest? Am I free to go? Those are the only 2 questions I ask. And I wait for an answer. They tend to try to circumvent answering the question and ask you other questions. And you're only obligated to get an answer to those 2 questions. And the first moment they say no to those 2 questions, then you turn around and walk away. Now, if you're a person of color, you'll probably back away because you aren't really sure that you could safely just turn your back and walk away. But the reality is that we all have the right, we have no obligation at all to talk to a police officer unless we want to. Or to be searched. I mean, so if somebody asks, can I search your backpack? No. Right? And so if you, period, no. It's like under no condition, no. And so then they have to decide if they have enough probable cause to place you under arrest in order to search your backpack. And 99.999% of the time, the answer is no. They just simply are nosy and want to know what you got in your bag.
However, if they don't know their rights, and as you've seen the audience, the interviews with the houseless community, said they're afraid of the police because they impose them anyway. When I first got here, they asked me where I was from. They was interviewing me, and I said, okay, I mess with them. And they knew I was in Chicago, and they asked me to do something. And I said no, and said, well, this is the way we do it here in Portland. And they tackled me, because people are afraid and then of retaliation from those police. We're wrapping up, and thank you for coming to watching another show of Right to Survive TV on Open Signal Community Media. And next time, be there or be square. And we want to thank JoAnn Hardesty again, president of NAACP and on City Council, running for city council. She's a candidate.
Portland City Council, position 3.
You can go to our site at R2SPDF@gmail, or go to our site, righttosurvive.org.
Somebody help me.